Okay, I remembered to hit record today because I forgot last week, so I wrote myself a note. Um, so the topic today is, I'm going to stop sharing. The topic today is really when Yvonne and I, so just so you get the little background scene, in the beginning of the school year, Yvonne and I sit down and we kind of map out all of the Thursdays for the school year and think about our topics. And hopefully you guys have noticed sometimes they're kind of random and like we just interject stuff. And then we do mix it around, like if there's something that comes up that we should talk about, and we try to have kind of a flow to them, so sometimes one week would lead into another. But this particular week, when the date was April 29th, today is my birthday, and so I was like, you know what, let's talk about getting older and aging, because I knew that it would be top of mind for me. So today's my 47th birthday. And I would say with myself, the question about the best and worst part of getting older, and I'm not somebody that has like ever been like, oh, I don't want to tell people my age, unless I was like my first couple of years teaching, because I started teaching when I was 23. And I taught seniors in high school, so I was only 5 years older than them. And so I like made myself older. I think I told them all that I was 27. And so I didn't, and I think I did that until I actually turned 27. And then I started using my real age. But so I've never really cared about getting older. I've been fine with it. When I turned 40, I was totally fine with it. I'm going to be honest, now that 47 is like, wow, that's my late 40s. Like that's the latter end of the decade. As I creep closer to 50, I am a little not as eager about it. For me, I would say the best part about getting older is I would say that I'm a lot more confident in myself. I've definitely lived some life. I know who I am. I've got a real strong sense of self, and that I've learned that just through life experience, and that I honestly feel like I'm happier today than I was when I was younger. The worst part, I don't know about you guys, but man, I feel like every time I look in the mirror, I'm like, what is going on with my body or my face? Like my downstairs bathroom gets like a different light, and I don't normally look in the mirror a lot in the bathroom, but I was in the downstairs bathroom, which I don't use actually a lot. And then just the time of day, the way the light was coming in, I was like, what's going on with my neck? Like, what is happening? So sorry, a little moment.
That you mentioned your neck, because I was just talking to the counselors the other day, and I'm like, what do people do for this? Like, I don't. What?
I was like, why is this a thing? So yeah, that's where I'm at with this. So I thought it would be a fun topic for us to talk about. We all may be different ages, but like we're also in what we all share in common is that we all are parents of teenagers. And it's a weird thing about getting older, because I don't know about you guys, like in my mind, I still like, I don't want to say I feel like I'm a teenager, but like I don't feel like I'm my age in my mind. Like the stuff I think about and the thoughts that I have are not all that different now than they were 20, 30 years ago. So it's a weird thing with getting older. Yvonne, what do you have to say about this topic?
Well, I'm kind of curious, and if you don't want to put it down, I'm kind of curious how old everybody is, because with teen parents, like sometimes I'll meet a parent and I'm like, gosh, I can probably almost be your parent. And then I'll meet parents who are like in their 50s and 60s. And so I know there's a diverse age range here, but like Ms. Davis said, we all have something in common, and that's having teenagers. And whether you're in your 30s or your 60s, like kids getting closer to adulthood definitely triggers some thoughts, right? I feel young in some ways and I don't in other ways. And I wanted to share this story about this parent that called me and she was like, I am so glad that my student was able to meet with you. And I really think that she feels comfortable with you because of your age. And I was like, oh, because, I'm hip and young or whatever. And then she went on to say, like, I feel like that kind of motherly energy for her has been really good. And I'm trying to stay engaged in the conversation. And I'm like, how did I even think she was talking to me like I was the I'm not the young therapist. My interns are young therapists. And I was like crushed. Like I couldn't even like focus on the rest of the conversation because I'm like, oh my gosh, her kid likes me because I'm motherly, like not because I'm cool, like how I feel on the inside, right? And that was just this breaking point in my career. I mean, I'm young in my career, right? Like I didn't go to college till I was in my 30s. This is my 5th year as a school social worker. So in my mind, I'm young, but in reality, I'm 42 years old, right?
I remember my first time a student. I don't know if it was the first time, but like it really stands out in my head. I was when I was teaching Avid, and I was really close with my Avid kids. Loved them, and one of my students, it was Suzette, told me, she's like, "Oh, Miss Davis, you're like my mom," and I think I was like, God, I was probably like 35 at the time. Yeah, I was probably 35. And I was like, you mean like an older sister, right? Like mom. Like,
Mom.
I think I'm a little too young to be your mom. Technically, I'm not, but it was like, I don't really see myself as the mom of teenagers because at that time my kids were really young and little. I think my son had just been born.
Oh gosh, that's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Like you said, you feel that way, right? And so I've been kind of doing a lot of research lately on like, existential thoughts and, the meaning of life and, where I am in my life. And so I was reading a lot and people were talking about like, you have all these plans in your life, right? Like I want to have a family and I want to have a career and I want to be financially stable. And, some of those things we've got through. We've had our family, we got married, I established my career, we're doing okay. And it's almost like life goes up, right? You're doing all these things and then you hit this moment of like, okay, I've got to where I wanted to go. And then I'm like looking in the distance and it's like, well, now I'm headed towards death. Like, right? Like, like what is next? And I kind of want to talk a little bit about like culturally, like how we see aging. And so if you're comfortable to put like a couple words in the chat, that would be super helpful. But when you think of getting old, what words pop up for you? Like for me, I think aches and pains. If you think about commercials that are focused on aging, they're like heart pills, sexual dysfunction pills. I'm watching TV when there's like things about like bladder control, like everything are things that are kind of scary when you think about getting old. And so for everyone, like what comes to your mind? Does anybody have positive thoughts about aging or is it all scary for all of us? Like for me, like I said, it's aches and pains. It's maybe like retirement. In some ways, I think it might feel lonely. What comes up for you, Ginny? Like with just
I would say like
getting
the first things that come up are definitely things like aches and pains and health problems. Like when I dig a little deeper and think about it a little more, then I think about like being wiser. You just mentioned retirement. I don't see retirement as a negative. I see that as like, for me personally, I'm like, someday I'll be able to retire and I'll have time to write the book I want to write or like do all this stuff that I want to do. I see that as like kind of the nirvana goal, like oh, someday. Virginia, you have your hand up. What about you?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
So I think the only one like negative especially like getting older with the high schoolers, is the generational changes that happen. Like, will I be able to keep up? You know, I'm only 35. Well, I'm 35, and there's a lot of things that are starting to change, and I'm like, wait, what does that mean? And that's what makes me feel like when my son says something and I just don't quite understand, that's what makes me feel old. And I'm like, okay, I need to understand these things, because there may be things that I'm missing, or things I can't catch on to, or that's where you just like, oh, my mom doesn't understand what that means, and I think that's the one thing that like concerns and worries me, is just things that we used to do as young teenagers or in high school, these kids are doing differently. And it's just trying to keep up with the times and being up to date with what's going on and the way they talk and what they're doing. Like, I mean, like one good example is vaping. We never had that when we were younger. Like, what the heck was that? And now these are things we have to worry about, we have to learn about, and to them it's like, yeah, that's a thing, and we just have to learn so much. That's what when I put in the chat, it's just the generational changes is what's the challenging thing to me.
Yep. I don't know if your kids have done this, but I'll be trying to do something on my phone and they'll snatch it away from me and be like, okay, boomer, let me do it. Or, okay, you're getting old, you don't know how to figure it out. Or maybe it's too sophisticated for you. And I'm like, maybe.
Yeah, no, there's definitely things that I'm like, Hannah, I don't know how to do this on my phone, and she'll like show me and I'm like, oh, good. Thank you. And, I think, Virginia, to your point, I think there is, I don't know if I worry about that. Sometimes I think I have an advantage as opposed to other parents in that I work in a high school. So I'm surrounded by teenagers all day long. It's not just my own teenager at home. Like, that's what I do for a living. And so I am fairly aware of the new trends and, what's going on and, what things mean. Though I am still taken by surprise by certain things. I don't know if you guys were on when we had the parent Zoom. Ooh, it was probably about a month ago now when we had the people come on and talking about vaping. And they were talking about the origin of, the dab move. I didn't know that was associated with vaping, and blew my mind. And I was like, we had this group chat between my husband and my daughter and myself. And I was like, whoa, I just learned this. And my husband just thought it was the dance. And he's like, you didn't know like what that was? I'm like, Paul, it's about vaping. He's like, it is. And my daughter was like, oh my God, you guys are too much.
I did that right now.
Oh, see, you didn't listen to the Zoom. You weren't on that one. Yeah, no, that blew my mind. I had no idea.
They're like dancing and doing their thing. It's like,
so apparently they like take a vape and then they pass it over to the next person, and that's where it comes from. Yeah, I know. Blew my mind.
Oh my gosh. So today we're talk a little bit about like the worries and that part, but then also like how to get through and how to change our perspective about the bad stuff. Again, it's like, I think of like, I don't know if anybody's had this happen yet, but when you get on BART or the bus and somebody stands up and gives you their seat, like that actually happened to me. And the kids were granted like 14, 15, but it still did something to me of like, do I look like I can't, like, I know they were being polite, but it kind of like stabbed me right in the heart. Have you had that yet?
I haven't. Well, I mean, I think it happened to me when I was pregnant, but no, not since then. I don't think it has.
I must have had a rough day. I don't know.
You must have just looked like, man, I need to sit.
I have having makeup on, but I think of like, older people, like, people you give up your seat to and help cross the street and carry groceries. Like that to me is like aging, but there's like this whole middle area they really kind of neglected to think about. And I think when you're raising children, we're hyper focused on raising our kids. And so all of a sudden, today is my son's 13th birthday. He's my baby, which means all of my boys are teenagers. And I feel like, I don't know, like, I just feel like, okay, like I blink and here I am with teenage boys who are very close to moving out of the house. And it just is giving me a lot. And we talked about this a little bit with empty nest, but just, that perspective of like, life is changing, life goes so fast. And so what comes up for us when we know that we're aging and life is going by fast? And I think, this guy that I was kind of researching this last night he did a survey on middle age and what the biggest worries are. And so I think we could probably all relate to some of these, but so he did a survey. I think it was like 5,000 people, all between the ages of 35 and 60, which I guess is considered middle age. And, there were no control groups. It was not like a total professional survey, but it was just him talking to people that he knew. And when you look into the future, what worries you the most? And the number one answer was not living life fully. And I can totally relate to that, because when you start to think backwards about, child rearing and the age, your kids being where they are, how much of that time did I spend on my phone? How much of the time did I spend nagging my kids and worried about a clean house and all these things that don't necessarily feel like they matter anymore? And I think that's a normal part of life. And I don't want people to look back just to have regrets, but I only like to glance in the past to make changes for the future, if that makes sense.
Yvonne, I read some articles like last night, knowing that we were going to talk about this. And one of the articles that I don't know, I remember if it was one I shared with you or not, but it was talking, because you talked about cleaning the house, and it was like, one of the advantages of getting into your 40s is that you're a lot more careful about who your friends are. And, you're like, the people you spend time with are people that you really enjoy, because like you have this awareness when you get to your 40s that like, life's too short. I don't have to spend time with that person. And that, I think that's very true for me. Like when people talk about relationship issues, and like I shared last week, we're doing this family therapy with the DBT, and the section we're on right now is on interpersonal relationships. And a lot of it, I'm like, I don't have a problem with that, because a lot of it is like, dealing with friends that like you're having conflict. I'm like, I don't have conflict with my friends, because I wouldn't be friends with them. I've reached the point in my life that if I'm going to have a lot of conflict with somebody, I'm just not going to be friends with you. Like, we're not going to hang out, because I'm just not going to do that. But I'm going back to the cleaning the house. And one of the things they're saying, like, you're friends with people that like, and then that you're not driven to like have a perfect house when people are coming over, because the people like, you're like, they know me, and like, this is just the way they live. And that is something that I definitely have found as I've gotten older. I mean, my house is not a pigsty, but if I'm having just friends over, I don't tend to do like this massive deep clean. If my parents are coming over, I do, because I'm still a kid and they're still my parents, and I don't want to hear from my dad about why does your house look like this, blah, blah, blah. So, because I think you still have that like even no matter how old I get, like when my parents are like nagging me, I'm like, just stop, I can't.
I can take the camera around right now in my house, because it's my son's birthday, so my mom's coming over, and it's just been a tough week. I mean, we've been busy. It's bad. I mean, I keep a clean house, but it's really bad. And if it were my friends, they know me, but it's my mom, and she's gonna like call an intervention. Like, I'm already worried about
isn't that funny? Like, I mean, yeah, like no matter how old you are, your parents can still like, like just that criticism from your parents, like,
well, I already know she's gonna come in and start folding clothes, like, and then that makes me feel terrible. But that's a whole nother thing. But I love what you said about like, almost like as you get older, not that you care less, but a little bit. But I think it's more about selecting the people that know you and accept you as is, right? I remember having this friend in my 20s. In my mind, she was perfect. Her house was perfect. Her kids were just perfect. Every time we were going to spend time together, I was a stress case. Did my kids look nice? Does my house look nice? And then I'm like, this isn't fun. And I did that through most of my 20s. We don't really spend much time together these days. But now the people I surround myself with know that life is life. And I don't feel the need to impress anyone or anything like that. And I think, like you said earlier, it comes with confidence. Like I always tell people, man, if I had the confidence of 42 and the figure of 22, I would be like a force to be reckoned with, right? Like that's like, but I think the universe has this way of like balancing things out. And I think just being confident and, you know, really trying to live life fully. And I've noticed this as, you know, preparing Ethan to go to college, right? Like, gosh, what could I have done better? And again, I don't want to beat myself up for what could have been different, but I have 2 more coming through. And what do I want to do differently? I want to live each day the fullest. You know, I want to be present. I want to do all these things. And so, you know, in that survey, it was like, that was the number one thing, is not living life fully. That's the biggest fear for people.
I like what Margaret's put in the chat, having more time to do or learn what you couldn't do before. I think that's one thing I have found. And yes, like we've talked about, like you can be totally wrapped up in your kids and life is so busy. It always is so busy. But I certainly have found as my kids have gotten older, I do have more time to myself. I think this is I'm especially cognizant of this because I have a personal trainer who was very young. She's in her 20s, so she always talks about how she's getting old. And I'm like, girl, you are like 27, whatever. But she has a 2-year-old, or just like, I think the baby's not even 2, I think it's 20 months old. She is 20 months old. But you know, and she's talking about just like how much time and you're constantly watching. She just went on a vacation with the baby and just, you know, like having to be in the pool and constantly watching. And we were talking about like, oh, as your kids get older, you don't have to like have that constant, and how nice that is. And it's freeing. And so that's definitely like when I compare my 40s to my 30s, I had young kids and I was just, it was constant like, with the young kids. And now with my 40s, my kids are older. They are, you know, for better or worse, wrapped up in their phone, wrapped up in their Xbox. That does give me time to spend more time in the garden, you know, and do things that I actually really enjoy. And that is a part of getting older that I love, that I don't miss being in my 30s. Like I didn't have the weird neck thing going on in my 30s. But I don't
use that for the having to deal with your kid at the restaurant. Like,
I don't. I'm like, I like it better now.
It's funny how like those kind of things. Yeah, like I don't like that part of getting old, and I noticed that my arm looks kind of like my mom's now. Like that's kind of freaking me out a little bit. But yeah, the freedom to like, you know, I'm not chasing kids around worried they're going to choke on Legos and all these things. There's definitely different worries in raising kids, but for the most part, I feel like there is more time to read and spend time alone. And I think that goes on to the next point of like some of the worries that people have. And the next one is becoming less worthy or invisible. And I think this goes even to like parenting, of like, we drill into our kids, like, what are you going to do for a living? What worth comes from what we do, right? Like focus is, this is who we are. This is what we do, you know. So when you're not doing those things anymore, when you're getting closer to retirement, like what do you have left? People say they're afraid of disappearing into the void, becoming less visible and less valuable. And I don't feel like that yet, I think, because my kids are still here, but I can see as they start to move out and age out that I worry about having worth and value. You know, there's so much of me wrapped up in my kids. Somebody described it as like your kids are almost like your legacy, and like they keep you immortal, and so you want to like put everything into them, but then you end up this like shell of a person. And that's something that I kind of fear, like what am I going to have when I don't have them?
You know, I had this realization, I may have talked about this before because it was kind of this profound moment of like light bulb moment that I had several years ago. I was driving to work. It was before I was back at Piedmont. It was when I was the assistant principal at Santa Teresa. And I was driving to work and I was listening to this podcast because I listen to a ton of podcasts. And they were interviewing this activist who was this young guy who had changed careers, and he was, I don't actually remember exactly what he was doing. I'm sure it was something about social justice, but he like had devoted his life and like was like really like making a difference. And I was like, had this like, God, that's so amazing. Like, I wish I could like have the guts to like do something about that, you know, and like have that. And then I had this like I remember I was driving on 87 right by like downtown San Jose, and I had this like light bulb moment that I was like, I work in education. I can make really positive change within my role. And I think that that's true for anybody, no matter what you're doing. Even if you are a stay-at-home parent, that you have these kids that you're raising and raising them to like, what are you raising the type of people that you're raising them to be? We are all members of a community. Like we like, it just kind of like I don't need to like wish that I was like doing something else or having some other career, that I have like power with what I'm doing right now to like make a positive change and like have like a passion and like focus on something. And it was just kind of this like moment of like, oh, I have all the tools I need.
Huh?
Yeah.
When you see somebody doing really big things that are on the news, it's easy for that to invalidate what you do, right? Like for me, it's like, okay, I'm not really changing the world, but I'm seeing one client at a time and I hope it makes an impact. And I'm like, well, no, that's actually kind of a big deal, like to make a difference in one person's life. Like I don't have to, be the next, Dalai Lama or what. Like it doesn't have to be that way. Like I can find meaning in what I do, but I like that your situation kind of like challenged you to think bigger that way and think about yourself having more of an impact in that way. That's what we all should be doing. And like you said, like being a stay-at-home mom and, whatever it is that you do, doing it with like a whole heart and enthusiasm and, I think should be enough. Right? It should be enough, but I think we've always kind of pushed to do more. But when are we happy with what we're doing, I guess is the question. Like,
yeah, I had to last week in our family therapy, the leader therapist who's leading the group, she was posing these questions and then randomly calling on us to answer the question. And so the question I got was, how do you define success, and do you view yourself as successful? And so, you're like put on the spot with like, and like all the questions were like heavy questions. And so my answer was that I define success as being passionate and fulfilled with the way you're living your life. And that's just, however, whatever you're doing with your life and however, whatever your passion may be, and are you fulfilled doing that? That's my definition of success. And I do actually, with that definition, I do view myself as successful. And so I think that, when I think about getting older, I think one of the things is like I mentioned before, like I have not had an issue with getting older. I've got the weird neck thing that I'm like, keep touching my neck. I'm like, ah. But because I like do feel like I'm successful, like that just gives me a measure of satisfaction. Then I'm like, yeah, I'm fine with getting older. I'm good. Like if I don't feel like I had that fulfillment and passion in my daily life, I might struggle more.
It's interesting because I'm thinking about my kids now, right? Like as you're talking, I'm thinking like, okay, I feel that. I totally feel that. But do I share that sentiment with my children, or do I still push them to feel like school and classwork and grades are the only thing that's important, right? Because I think that's kind of embedded in our culture of like, you have to do well, you have to do this, but we don't really remind our kids that there's more to them, right? And I was just working with a student this week and we were talking about like the component, and I've talked about this before, the life wheel and how we're all built of like separate parts, but how we tend to hyper focus on education, right? But we neglect to talk about, acknowledge, validate the other parts of our kids, like their friendships, their relationship with their family, their health, their leisure, their fun, their personal growth, their environment. Like, we don't ask questions like that. We don't. And so it would be very easy for our own children to move into their adulthood and aging feeling like they haven't done enough, or they're not enough, or that they don't have worth in other ways. And it's something that I really, it talks about this one, the fears about aging. It talks about like the future of your kids, how you raise them. Was it enough? Am I going to make enough money? How is it going to be being on my own? But for me, the main one I think is the future of my kids. And did I do and say all the things to prepare them for all of the like stressful stuff that's coming up? Like when they're my age, I want them to know that they're successful, not just based on how much money they make, but on the impact they have in their environment, on how happy and fulfilled they feel in what they're doing, that they made the right choice in their career and they feel passionate about it. Like, that's not stuff I really put on my kids now, but maybe it's something that we need to really make that shift. It's like, and I asked this last week, I think it was like, how many times in the last week have you asked your child about anything other than school? I don't know what, how is that for everyone? I'm pointing at myself because that's not something I tend to, I'm learning, but I think, if we want them to have an easier adjustment to aging and middle age, like they need to know what really is important. And, those are things that I wish I knew growing up. I'm going to talk a little bit about,
it's funny. I'm like thinking about, God, what if I, at the end of the day, I always ask my kids, like, how was your day? I don't ask them how was school. I ask them, how was your day? But I was just thinking about, I don't ever ask them that question on a weekend.
Like your secret.
Okay.
That's a good point. And sometimes I'll do it late at night because I feel like I see Margaret's hand.
I really appreciate for the topic today, aging, because I'm 61 now. Okay, so last year when I had my 60 years birthday, I'm kind of feel very strange, about the birthday, because one of my friends, she said that she's not going to celebrate her birthday because she's going to be 60 years. So she kind of like cannot accept the age that she's going to be, So that's very interesting for me.
Yep.
I would say that for Chinese, the failure is very important and very valuable virtue for Chinese culture. So when I took care of my parents many years ago, I realized that I have to adapt to the value in here. So I feel that failure, this word, should be end in my generation. I shouldn't pass this value to my kids. Well, I feel that this idea is great, but when I really get into 60, I started to think of this virtue again, because when my parents passed away, I started to visit the nursing home. And then I saw a lot of seniors sitting in the wheelchair or be fed by the worker, Yeah. Every time after I visited the nursing home, I felt really sad and lost. So I started to think one question, which is that when we really getting old, what we can still have in our hand, or even when we pass away, what we can leave in the world. So these questions really kind of like bothering me now. I should say bothering, because I feel that it's really hard to get an answer. Okay, that's me. Okay, thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Margaret, for sharing. And you know, I think like aging and again, I think it's a cultural thing. Like, you know, I talk to other therapists and I tell them like, I really like to study and learn about death and dying. And everyone's like, oh, but it's the weirdest thing that we are all going to die, but nobody wants to talk about it, right? And so I think as we start aging and we get more, you know, comfortable with it, I think what's going to be really important is that perspective shift. And here it asks the question like, what would open up for you if you knew your age was nothing but a number? And, you know, we talk about, again, like aging in a negative way, like, oh, I'm too old for that, or, oh, I don't want to do that, you know, but if you could just remove that thought from you, is there anything that you would do now? I was reading like George W. Bush or whatever. He was like skydiving on his 90th birthday. Like, are there any things that you already feel limited by due to your age? Right? Like, I used to play roller derby, right? I used to skate and it was like I would always fall and get hurt. And then I think it was right around my 40th birthday. I'm like, I can't do that anymore because I'm gonna break my hip or whatever. And I'm like, I don't know. Like I put that limit on myself. It's probably a safe choice really to not do it anymore. But I put that limit on myself due to age. So maybe it's shifting that perspective of like getting older is a gift that not everybody gets, right? And so how do we really celebrate that gift? Like Margaret, your friend not celebrating her birthday, it's like it's a gift to be 60 that a lot of people around the world don't have, you know. And so I hope you were able to celebrate yours. I mean, I know it'll be strange, but you know, Ginny, as you're pushing 50, no, I'm just kidding.
Virginia, you have your hand up.
So I just wanted to share, also listening to the stories, that I think I really thought about age even before becoming a parent. So I had older parents because I was not planned and always embarrassed. I wouldn't tell my parents about, you know, social events that were happening because I had the older parents from all my friends. So growing up, that was one thing I immediately knew was I do not want to have children, you know, because I don't want to be that old parent. I don't want my kids to be embarrassed of me. And so I decided, like growing up, that I was going to have my kids in my 20s and nothing later than my 20s so that I can enjoy them and grow up with them, which is what I'm able to do now. And I'm loving every bit of it. And also thinking like of, you know, I don't want to be an older parent where they're going to lose me earlier in their life. You know, I'd rather them be older in life and really understand that I would be aging at an older, you know, time. So I think I really thought about aging even before thinking about aging. Like it had really crossed my mind and helped me decide when I was going to start my family, when I was going to have kids, and how I kind of wanted to play that out.
You know, isn't it interesting? I think no matter like with your parents, they always seem old, right? I think back when I had my first child, I was 29 when my first child was born. I'm the oldest, and so when I was born, my mom was 26, so she was younger than me when she had her first child. And so just kind of throughout like milestones and stuff, you know, with my daughter, you know, looking back, like she's graduating from high school this year and I'm 47, and then realizing, wow, my mom was 44 when I graduated high school. She seemed so old. And she's younger than I was, but she just seemed like so old. And I'm like, God, do my kids see me as this old?
It's I remember my dad coming to my softball games with a video camera, and it was super embarrassing. And I did the math a couple days ago, and I think it was like late in my high school. He was like 43, and he was old and embarrassing to me. I used to like I hated it, and I'm thinking like, like you said, is that what my kids see right now? Like, no wonder. And then I work at the school that they go to. Like, that's extra torture, right? Like,
I know. The funniest thing, my son has a mouth on him, and he can just make the most cutting comments. And a couple of years ago, we had this crazy dog that used to escape our house, and like you'd have to like chase him down, and like he was impossible to catch, and like it was a horror story. And so anyway, this one day he got out, my husband was having to chase him down the streets, and like we finally caught the dog, but it was a whole ordeal. And so we told my son Nathan the story about like Paul, my husband, was like, Nathan, I couldn't catch Ono, who's our dog, and I'm like chasing after him, and Nathan's like, well, yeah, because you're a middle-aged man. And it was just so cutting, but it was something that my husband and I laugh about it all the time. Like, we're like, oh, you're just a middle-aged man. Like,
oh my God. Oh, that's terrible. You know, I came across this term that I hadn't heard before, and you know, it's mindful aging. And I was like, okay, so I kind of started researching it. There's actually a book about it. Maybe that'll be our next book club.
nice.
And it kind of like gives some tips about, you know, what that means. And it's the first step to mindful aging is simply allowing yourself to be in the moment and accept the present for what it is, rather than thinking too far ahead or going back too far in your memories. And so like the daily way to incorporate that in your life, it says banish negative self-talk. Avoid statements like, I'm too old to blank. What would that be for you, Jeannie? Have you said that to yourself yet? Or because I know we still feel you, so maybe we're not there yet, but.
You know, I don't think I've said it as like, oh, I can't do it. I mean, there's certainly things that I can't, I'm not that I can't do that I'm not gonna do. Like, I'm not gonna go bungee jumping just because I really don't want to. That seems very scary, and it doesn't have anything to do with age. I didn't want to do that in my 20s. Like, I don't want to do that. I don't know. I just feel like I actually had that thought this morning. I was working out. I was like trying to do a lunge, and like on the screen, like the guy is like, hey, touch your knee to the ground. And I'm like, my body can't do that. Like, I can't. And I'm like, honestly, I'm like, am I too old and can't do that? Or am I just like not flexible enough? I'm like, how can he do that? Like, I literally can't do that. So it was funny because like, I'm saying this, like, I didn't really have the thought like, oh, I'm too old to do that. But I did have I don't think I can do that.
Yes, there's a challenge, a couple challenges going on, and like physical challenges at work, you know, and I'm doing one with one of the PE teachers. And the first week was, by the end of the week, you have to do 300 squats, 200 push-ups, and 100 sit-ups.
Like all at once or spread out over the week?
Over the week.
Okay.
When you procrastinate, it's going to be really hard to stand up. I'll just tell you that right now. But I don't know if it was I'm too old or I'm too out of shape, but I was just like watching her do it in the video, and she's probably 10 years younger than I am. And I'm like, I am too old to win this challenge. Like, that's how I felt. Like, it was
actually teaser for next week, because she's talking about Ms. Iochi. Ms. Iochi is joining us next week to talk about health and fitness. So
I'm busy. The only thing I ever think I'm too old for, like, I say like, I'm too old for glitter nail polish, but I don't care. Like, I'm too old for bright pink lipstick, but I don't care. Like, those are the only thoughts I've had, but I guess maybe I'm not quite.
I got my nose pierced about 3 years ago. And I could tell like my husband and like was like, my daughter thought it was great. My daughter's always very supportive about anything that I want to do with that sort of thing. But I was like, I don't care. I'm not too old to do that. I've always and that was something like I was in my 40s, because it was something I have always wanted to have my nose pierced. But when I was in my 20s and my 30s, I honestly was too nervous about doing it. Like, I don't know how it's going to look. You know, am I going to look like, is it too edgy? Is it? And then when I got to my 40s, like that was like a change in myself that I was like, I don't care. I've always wanted that, and I'm going to do it.
I mean, that's the beautiful part of aging. And like, we're talking about like age is a gift. Like, it is a gift to not care. It is a gift to, you know, be able to feel more free. Like, I was totally like, you know, put down by other people's thoughts and expectations and worries. And now it's like, you know, I am the social worker that has tattoos and I'm 42. Like, it just is, right? Like, And I think that like the people that know me and they know that the work I do, like it's not really an impact. I don't think. I mean, that's how I feel.
I was reading, real quick, I was reading an article about like trends and like how styles are changing and like how stuff changed over the pandemic and you may not be aware because you haven't been out shopping. And I was like reading all this, like all these like new styles and like what's out, what's in, and I was like, I don't care. I like what I like. I know I like my clothes. I know it looks good now. That's like, I know how to dress now and how to look good and I like it and I'm just going to keep doing my
That's
thing.
awesome. Yeah. And fashion magazines, I'm like, like, you're right. Yeah, I don't care. In my 20s, I was like, oh my gosh, I can't wear this. I can't wear white after Memorial or Labor Day or whatever. Like, I actually don't care. So banishing that negative self-talk. I'm not too old to wear XYZ. I'm not too old to do these things. I can do what I want to do. The next one is learning. This is mindful aging, learning to let go. And we talked a little bit about it before about not feeling obligated to hang out with people that you don't want to hang out, using your time wisely. Like my free time is very precious. I don't have a lot of it. I want to spend it with my family. I have a job, but my spare time is precious and I'm going to be selective about how I spend it and, letting go of toxic relationships and embracing the now. I don't want to waste time doing things. I don't know how much time I have, right? And I want to make sure that I'm really utilizing my time the way that I want to. Mindful aging, shifting your focus on looking inward and making decisions for your own joy instead of the approval of others. When you're young, you live life for other people. You live life for other people's approval. And as you age, part of that gift is not caring and focusing on you and allowing yourself to be quote unquote selfish and do the things that you want to do. So that's shifting your focus, having a vision, picturing what you want your life to look like and take steps to turn that vision into a reality. Write the vision down. Like, I want to, in the next maybe 10, 15 years, start a private practice where I do therapy on my own little farm with animals. That's my thing. Like, and that's something that I'm really excited to do and working towards doing. And I'm not going to be too old to do it, and I love the work I do, but really like having a vision to do more. I don't feel like I'm at the height of my life and things are going down. Like, I feel like that helps me prolong the high. Right. I thought you were going to say something, Ginny.
No, I'm with you.
Are you going to come to my farm?
Yeah. I was listening to another podcast driving into work today, and they were somebody who like was a farmer, and I was like, oh, I'd love to be a farmer. I was like, I could be totally down with being a farmer.
I love baby goats and chicken. I don't know why. And then the last part of mindful aging is respecting your body, combat the physical effects of aging. Like, I know for you, Judy, this year's been like your exercise year. You're killing it. And I know that's probably helping in the aging process and not feeling the way that,
Oh, for sure. I feel so much better this year than I did last year on my birthday. I've lost weight. I'm like much better shape, and it just does make a difference. And I'm so happy that this is something that I've discovered in myself that I really enjoy. My daughter last night was like, Mom, you're not going to get up and work out in the morning, right? It's your birthday tomorrow. Like, why would you work out on your birthday? And I'm like, well, yeah, I am. And she's like, why? And I'm like, because I like it. It's my time. It's like my time. It's time that I devote to me. I like it. And what else would I do on my birthday?
I think back at my 20s of like, oh, I have to, be on a diet because I got to look skinny and wear the right clothes. And I think I'm to a point right now where, I could definitely stand to lose some weight, but I've been really focused on like what kinds of food I'm eating, right? Like lots of plants, lots of, things like that. And I actually feel like my skin looks better, but I feel kind of more healthy on the inside, like things I didn't really care about because again, it was like the focus on what other people are seeing as opposed to what I'm really feeling. And so, just like honoring your body, we get one vessel, we get one body, taking care of it. And the better we do that, you know, our years of aging is going to feel a lot more comfortable, right? And a lot more, we're going to have more, you know, means of like getting around. Like I get so worried about, like, people talk about retirement, and, you know, it almost feels like you're too old once you retire to enjoy things. And that's not true. And so trying to remove that negative self-talk of like, I can finish my career and do the things that I want to do before I end my career. Like, why do I have to wait? And so really just like being in the moment and taking advantage of every day. And then the last one is just having an outlet, doing something that sparks your creativity, something that you love, volunteering, starting another career, you know, whatever it is you want to do. I love learning, you know, and this year has been really good for my personal growth because I've taken a lot of extra seminars that I wouldn't have had time to do for work and things like that, that I feel were really helpful in my own life and in my career. And so, you know, having something that I'm passionate about is making this a little bit easier for me, I think. You know, because once our kids are gone, I mean, they're still part of our life, but what do we have left? You know, who has, you know, do we have a life? Do we have hobbies? Do we have vision? I think having all those things is going to make this so much easier.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, for myself, like I said, I've got my hobbies. I've got things that I do for myself. I enjoy that I have time, even though I'm still, like, my kids are still obviously a big part of my life and stuff, time that I have to devote to them. But I am looking forward, that I mentioned earlier, I am looking forward to retirement. Like, there are things that I would like to do that, like, maybe I could make the time, but then I'd have to sacrifice something else. Like, I have always wanted to be a writer and, like, really, like, write. You guys read my emails. I write really long emails. I love writing. And so that's something that I've always really wanted to do, but it's not something that I have a lot of time to devote to right now. And so that is definitely something that I'm kind of holding as, like, kind of the goal for the future. Like, oh, at some point I'll get to retire, and then I'll get to, like, have that and to be able to devote the time to that.
Yeah.
Margaret, you go ahead, Margaret.
Okay, today I really find the answer. Every time I read your email, I always questioned, oh my God, how come you have so many things to write and there's so much time to write, you know? But now I know that you are really enjoying. Okay.
I'll be honest, some weeks are easier than others.
For me, that will be a very hard work, you know, to do.
Yeah, and it depends. You can always tell if it's a longer email. That usually means that I wrote it on Friday when I had time and I could take my time. If it's shorter, then I wrote it on Sunday and I'm like, oh man, I got to send this out in like 30 minutes. I got to get this done.
I just like to share. I just like to share that what I focus now on this age. The first one is I'm kind of to take some class like yoga. You know, I think to keep the physical healthy is the kind of like to get the happiness for the life. You know, so I started to take the class of yoga, and then I found that in fact our body really let me feel that it's unlimited. So it's kind of very joyful whenever I do the yoga. The second thing is that I like to keep my psychological, you know, healthy. So I started to learn one musical instrument, which is erhu, like Western violin, but it has only 2 strings, you know. So and I also very, very enjoyed it, even though one day or 1 week I can only play one section, but I still very, very enjoy that moment, because every day I feel that I get a little bit in progress, you know, improved. So in whether the gesture or the voice, you know, whatever. I just really enjoyed that. So back to what I put the questions before, I think in one way, I have to accept my aging, you know, my age. The other side is that I also need to prepare it. And the third thing is that, of course, prepared it also including that I have to enjoy it. But the third thing is still for me, I need to look some maybe like a mission or something like that. I don't have a correct word to describe that, you know. Yeah, just like to share this. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really great. All right, Yvonne, we're going to wrap this up. It's 10 o'clock. So
Yeah.
I feel like I could talk about this for hours and hours and hours.
Well, happy birthday, Ginny.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. And as I mentioned, next week, I'm super excited. Next week, PE teacher Samantha Iochi is going to join us, and she's going to be talking about health and fitness, not only for us, but for, you know, our teenagers and how to get them to focus on health and fitness. Because especially, I don't know about your kids, my kids have been on the couch for a year. So this will be good. But thank you guys, and thank you for the birthday wishes. I appreciate them, and have a wonderful day.